I'm really curious, right? So like when I talk to like new trainers and stuff like that, not new trainers, trainers that I haven't engaged with a whole lot.
Yeah.
One thing that I really like discussing is like you were saying, like we want to constantly be growing in the dog world. We want to constantly be learning stuff like that. What right now is really exciting you in the dog world? Like, what do you feel like you're looking at? Like when you look at your training, what are you trying to continue improving, or what are you really, really like, man, this has me excited right now, you know?
So another trainer and me kind of coined this, but force free plus tools. That's trying, just because all the force free people hate us.
Hell yeah.
But they only use one quadrant of learning theory,
Yeah.
maybe two.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't know. I want to push a understanding of tools, really. That's my biggest thing, because I'm not a huge prong collar guy.
Mm-hmm.
I use prong collars and I put them on clients' dogs, especially large dogs that,
Sure,
God forbid, they decide to go, you're going.
Yeah.
So it's a little power steering for them. But as far as like putting them on every single dog, to me, I feel like at that point we need to reevaluate our training, because if it's not applicable to the owner without that tool, and it's not like a dog who's going to drag them to the ground,
Sure.
then there's something that we could probably tweak to that. Because I have a trainer that dogs go home just to be walked on a sidewalk with a prong collar and e-collar.
Sure.
And I'm like, for me, if your dog is that reactive where you think you need to have that much power to say no, then you need to go back up in your training, like a lot of ways. But yeah.
That's cool. Now, do you use e-collars?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you do?
Almost. Yeah. Oh, I use this husky right to my left. She's in for off-leash training. It's a 3 program. I use e-collars on every dog I get, but I use it very differently than most people, I'd say.
Sure. Now, like as far as like your general kind of camp of e-collar training, I mean, are you like, I don't like using like trainers to describe it, right? But like, are you more in like the camp of like kind of what Larry Crone does as far as a lot of the pairing it with food and things like that, or?
Yeah, that's I take a lot of my stuff from Larry, but so I don't know, because I started with such a pressure on like compulsion trainer, and I've never worked for a force-free trainer.
Sure.
But I don't know. They seem to not want to deal with me very much, but it is what it is.
What else is there?
But what are you going to do?
Yeah.
But for me, like, I don't know. The Larry Cron is probably my biggest one, and then just toying with it.
Yeah.
Just going out there myself with the dog and trying one thing for a couple days and seeing how that works. But it is a bit of pressure and release with the e-collar. It paired with food, but the thing I don't like with the modern day e-collar use, that some people use it, and I don't know, I'm not aware how you guys use it, but for, like, e-collars, when people use them as nose, because the problem is, and there's a Bo Harrison talks about this a lot, and I love listening to him, but he talks about the e-collar, like if your dog understands that you're the one being like, no, they're going to be like, they're going to have this little thing in the back of their mind, like, how can I get past that? Because my cattle dog,
I get what you're saying.
He's like that, you know, and a lot of people are like, oh, the dogs blow right through it. They don't really care. And it's like, that's because you're constantly saying you can't, with higher level corrections instead of the repetitions that are needed to understand. Because I'll sit there and call my dog back 20 times from a deer.
Sure.
I'm not going to blow that up and just be like, no, leave the deer alone and then you're good. You got to stay with me. But I mean, I'd say most of my dogs leave here about at pretty typical low, anywhere from 9 to 15 outside, you know?
Yeah.
And that's like correction level.
Sure.
Once that's their correction level, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think I get what you're saying. You know, I think a lot of that, and what you're doing is you're putting in the groundwork, right, through all of those repetitions to reduce the need of being, you know, of needing to give a bigger correction for stuff, right? You know, it's, I would say my only issue that I've had in a lot of cases with some of like the low level, like really preaching like low level with e-collar and stuff like that a lot is not that it, like there's plenty of dogs that work super low. Like you were saying, like you could definitely get a dog to be responsive to a low level. But in a lot of cases, I've found there's always one moment or two moments in that dog's life where it's like, we're working at that 12, we're working at that 15, right? And because we've put in the reps around the deer, right, it works. They understand, hey, that pressure happens. I'm not supposed to do this. Plus, I might get a reward if I go back to him, et cetera, et cetera. But there's always that one moment where they do decide to just blow that off, right? And they have to understand in that moment that that level will increase to something that they're motivated enough by in order to detach from that thing. And us as trainers, like the one thing that, like, when I talk to a lot of trainers, is like, we're so good at like managing our environment. You know what I mean? Like our dogs, a lot of the reasons why our board and trains and our personal dogs are so responsive to us is because they truly see, even if we're not, they see us as somebody that controls everything going on in the world around them, right? They see somebody that keeps them safe in those environments and keeps those off-leash dogs away and makes sure they're not in harm's way with those types of things, right? So, you know, as a trainer, we could avoid so much conflict. You know what I mean? But it's like so many owners, I feel like, have such a difficult time doing that. And like, yeah, that's an owner problem. That's something we need to educate them to be better, obviously. I just feel like sometimes like they run into a lot more of those scenarios where the dog chooses to blow them off because of that. You know what I mean? And it's a hard balance of navigating like being fair on the dog and saying, well, like let's back off a little bit on just like jacking the level up in that situation, right? You know, because there's some groundwork that you could do to establish that same kind of leadership and respect that like we have with the dog, while also like understanding they're going to make so many more mistakes than we are. And if they're going to have that control, the dog still does need to care a little bit more about them. You know what I mean? So I'm curious your opinions on that.
Yeah. I mean, I think us as trainers, we need to do a better job at bringing our dog training to reality.
Sure.
Like all these dog trainers that these big like box store dog training and whatever that take their dogs to Lowe's and they're like, look how good your dog is. And it's like, cool. Anyone who works with animals understands if an animal's in an overstimulating area, they're probably not going to react normally.
100%.
And so for me, it's like, I don't get why we're bragging so much about like, look at this dog where he's not comfortable in this situation. I want you to see him on his street passing the arch he's gone after for the past 5 years of his life.
Yeah.
And now we're getting him through that. Yeah. And like that because like owners see like these dogs out at these stores and they're like, I can't even walk my dog past the neighbor. And it's like
let's start with that. Yeah.
Right. Like for me, it's people think that's impressive and it's not. Like so many people, and there's a trainer in my town who does this stuff all the time, who shows their dogs on these crazy cool like field trips. So and like they're doing so great, but then I meet with the owner after and they can't even have anyone.
They still can't have a guest come over. Yeah.
Right. And it's like they have a prong collar, an e-collar. And I just met with a lady she came from Indianapolis, and her dog had been through a force-free trainer, a balance trainer, and never learned how to use an e-collar or a prong collar.
Yeah.
And I use transitional leads. That's like my go-to leash.
Yeah. It's the Heather Beck thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that is a compulsionary tool.
Sure.
And a lot of people, like even in my town, a place just opened and they're force-free trainers, but on the front page, they have a trainer with a transitional leash.
And I'm like, that's a kicker. Yeah. Uh-huh.
like, and they're like, oh, we're dog trainers. And I'm like, you literally don't even know what tool you have in your hand.
Yeah.
And you take people's money, and it's so frustrating because like owners think that like trainers who are like, oh, come to our academy for like weeks and they'll do puppy play and all this shit that will hurt my relationship with the dog. And like, you'll be so much happier.
Yeah.
And it's almost a mockery. Like they're just like, look, I can make money and I know absolutely nothing.
100%. You know, and it's so funny. Like I agree with everything you're saying. And listen, like we're totally guilty of the posting the field trips thing. You know, like we do a lot of Home Depot trips and stuff like that. And listen, I think there's a lot of benefit to taking dogs into different environments and working and stuff, right? That being said, to your point about like, again, working in the environments the dog is comfortable in, like that's really where I think a lot of people get it wrong. And that's why you get to board and trains. Like one question I asked Tyler the other day is like, what's your thoughts on board and trains right now, just in general? Because I think so many of them are moving in this direction of the dog is at their facility. They do all the training at the facility. They go to Home Depot, right? They go to the local park, which again, we do all of those things with dogs. And then they have a 1 hour long send home lesson and maybe like one follow-up lesson. You know what I mean? And they never see any, you know what I mean? Like there's no plan for like these things that you're struggling with at home. This is how you work through those things. And one thing he had said is, you know, us as trainers, we need to sometimes I forgot exactly how he said it, but he said, we need to get out of our own heads a little bit as far as what we think we need to do with the dogs. And we need to start focusing on what are the things the client actually is struggling with.